to have you all here, and you're all addressing different topics, and I think it's going to be very exciting. Over to you at the very end.
Yes, my name is Michaela Leitz. I'm plus-size luxury fashion stylist, and I'm focusing on inclusion, and I'm extremely happy to talk about sustainability in my industry, in the plus-size industry.
Hello, I'm Katja, and together with Sophia Wild, I established Sophia Melina White, luxury labels, and just to measure. And we allow people to produce customized fashion for the mass.
My name is Melina Bucher, and we develop leather accessories from a vegan material completely free of plastics, and it is our goal to create a circular leather supply chain, and we are working on this with full steam.
Majken, you already introduced yourself. I don't think you have to repeat this. Thanks very much for your presentation. You talked a lot about your situation. Would you say that Denmark actually sees itself as a pioneer in sustainability by design terms, or where do you see the approaches? Where are you? Where do your inspirations come from?
Okay, for sure. Oh, I have to take this one off because otherwise I hear myself. For sure, I see Denmark as a pioneer within this, not Denmark in itself, but through collaborations. One of the examples that I could highlight here is, for example, the Copenhagen Fashion Week. The Copenhagen Fashion Week has just now incorporated these new sustainability goals or requirements for all brands participating in the Fashion Week. It's 18 different action points throughout 6 different themes, so to speak, that the brands have to live up to. And I actually think that is spearheading the industry moving forward to a more sustainable way of working. And I think this is inspiring, and I think that's the way we have to go to actually nudge both the brands but also the consumer in thinking in a more sustainable way. So for sure, I think that that's the kind of inspiration that we need worldwide, and I guess many other, not fashion weeks, but many other collaborations throughout the world work with a focus on sustainability, but I think this is one of the spearheading kinds.
Das ist ja gerade so.
This is your aim as well, because you've established brands that are not only oriented towards more sustainability, but who want to transport this externally. Katja, I would like to ask you, you make dress to measure, or you are the contradiction to fast fashion. So how prepared are customers to accept your lead times? How long does it take to make to measure? And is it still affordable? Fast fashion is cheap, we know that. Gone fast, and but with you, it's completely different. It's a completely different approach. Tell us.
Thank you for the question. Yes, I would like to answer your question in various points, because the big question is not who can afford this on the side of the consumers, but I would like to ask the question, can we still afford the mass production that we had in the past? This is the important point. We've got excess production everywhere. There are so many consumers buying things that they don't want or need, 1.2 billion euros worth.
Yeah, ultra-fast fashion providers. We talked about this yesterday. This is really alarming, and they're mushrooming with thousands and thousands of pieces per power. This is really the counter movement, isn't it?
Absolutely. It it is too much, it's not good quality, it is discarded very quickly, and then back to the question, who can afford our clothes? Yes, it's expensive, but you only buy one piece and then you can have it for your entire lifetime because it's great quality and well produced. And also the models that we now have, that we still have standard sizes, it's no longer up to date. We've got so many different shapes of women, tall women, broader women, and we have to provide clothes for everybody, and we can't continue with the normal standard models. We now have to completely turn this around, and we have to give women the opportunity to design their own clothing. It's a digital twin. You can see the clothing. It's close to reality. You can also add your own creativity, and this is easy for the consumer. It's fun for the consumer, and this is very important, and it's a very emotional process. And then people are prepared to wait 3 weeks for a piece of clothing, but then it's a perfect fit.
As you just said, it works on an online platform. How do you make sure that it fits perfectly? Yeah, could you move your chair a little forward? It looks like if you were sitting in the palm tree.
Genau, das perfekt passt.
Yes, perfect fit. Our process at present is that we need 7 measuring points by the customer, and we have online and offline both. The women come to us, and sometimes we also go to the stores and take measures of the women. It takes 5 minutes, and then we've got the profile in our computer, and all the rest is built in such a way, the logics are built in such a way that we can then cater for all types of figures, small sizes, petite sizes, up to size 44. Everything is automated. You then create the patterns, and then we ensure a perfect fit.
Because size, this is the perfect transition to Michaela. You just said you are a plus-size fashion stylist, and you're an exclusive size expert as well. There's so many terms on the market. There's curvy, plus size, size inclusive. I mentioned this before. Could you shed some light on these various terms and explain what this means and why you're so passionate about it? Because many would like to buy certain items but can't because the sizes are just not available for not normal sizes. You don't find the right thing, which is really sad. Maybe you can actually define the terms.
Happy to do this. Yes, I know that people are very confused about the different terms. Plus size, well, this is something that is covering sizes above 44 in Germany, so this is plus size. Then we've got curvy. Curvy basically does not really mean that you are plus size, that you need a plus size, but just that you have a more curvy body. So you've got perhaps the larger chest or something, but this does not necessarily mean plus size. A plus size can also be curvy, but size inclusive means that more or less that a brand is inclusive, and this does not only mean inclusive of plus sizes, but this means that clothes are offered for everybody, no matter whether you are petite or tall. There is an offer for everybody, and I'm focusing on plus size. I'm living it myself, but I also have to say that it's not only for plus sizes, it's also for petite. There are also people with very small feet, and it's difficult to find footwear, or there are also people wearing 3XS, and it's difficult to find proper garments. So this is size inclusivity. And why am I doing this? Well, I have to admit that I used to be size 0. I really wore size 0, but then I gained weight a lot, and then I suddenly found I can no longer find anything in the stores. I can't find any clothing. Nothing is available online. So what do I do now? And I was on Instagram, and many people wrote to me, I love what you do, but well, what can we do now? And I said, I want to change something in the world. I want to change the fashion industry, the textile industry, but how do I do this? So I studied fashion design and consulting, and I really want to help women who don't find proper clothing, because sometimes it's difficult to find something for our bodies, not because of our bodies, but because the market is not good for us. And this is why I said I want to make changes here. I want to make sure that everybody can go shopping and can feel beautiful. This is my mission.
We're speaking about sustainability here. How do you actually embed sustainability here?
Sustainability, it's quite difficult at present. As a business owner, of course, I try to do everything. I only use trains when I travel through Europe. I work online, paperless office. But if it's about my job as fashion stylist, it's very difficult because there are only very few brands that are sustainable. It's also very difficult to find information about companies or brands offering plus size fashion. So either I'm sustainable, then I don't have any selection, or I use brands which are not necessarily sustainable. So it's very difficult at present to find the right balance. The only thing that I can do is that I do not refer people to fast fashion giants. I would not tell people this is pants that you can buy at Shein. This is something that I definitely wouldn't do. I would hate it. It's still the problem that we can't do in-store shopping. We have to order everything home, and each order has a CO2 footprint, and then not everything is fitting because the fashion industry does not always understand the patterns, and this means that a lot has to be sent back to the companies, so sustainability is not strong.
But what about the possibilities to cooperate or to network, like with Melina? Could we move any closer? This suggests itself, made to measure in your case as well. And if you then offer some consulting, well, there is a cooperation and there are possibilities also for plus size or curvy women. And this attitude also often has to do with how I feel in a certain outfit. And when somebody is really made to measure, and this is then actually combined with a clear conscience, this would be even better. Well, I think that materials are difficult in this particular off-the-shelf or almost impossible. And you take a very close look at your materials. How do I process it? And you at the end as well, but also the ingredients. What do you use? And with your label, you focus very much on accessories with bags in particular. And you use vegan materials in particular. What are these materials? And we will talk about this a little bit because vegan often means plastic. Maybe you can talk about it. There's so many questions marks.
Well, when I started to deal with sustainable fashion, I found out that there is a lot of research on textiles, but unfortunately there is not a lot of research about leather. On the one hand, we've got animal leather, and next to the ethical component, tanning is also difficult because chemicals are used which are very toxic. And regarding the vegan materials, we very often have the problem that plastics is included, and this is why we started 3 years ago to cooperate with a bio startup from the United States to produce a plastic-free vegan leather, which will then also be used by BMW in the cars. The basis is natural rubber and various plant materials, and it was important for us to make sure that it has the same performance as real leather. It also had to go through all the performance tests at BMW as a natural leather. But this is not the end of the day. We almost only talk about the outer material, but what we are doing in the research project is we take the bag apart and see what's what else is in there? You've got the seams, you've got the zippers, and all this is not sourceable for a circular economy yet. And this is crazy. We have so many bag labels. The bag market has a revenue of 800 million, and there is no solution.
This is what we talked about, the transparency of supply chains, all of the individual components and ingredients, how sustainable are they, and how can you actually trace them back? This is a huge problem. How would you do it in sourcing?
We mainly collaborate. We collaborate with many smaller shops, and otherwise it's really not possible. The large ones, they go for the big volumes and they are not really interested. So we work with small jewelers, for example, in order for the metal parts. We are also working with small bag producers because the new materials, they have to be treated differently. It's not easy to use them. Very often people just have a new material, hand it over to the manufacturer, and if it doesn't work in the same way as natural leather with the same sewing machines and the same machines, then they say it's not possible. No, sometimes you also have to think about new processes. You have to change the processing of your materials, and here it's necessary to establish partnerships with smaller companies. Otherwise, people will just cheat.
Cheating is a good buzzword. I mentioned this vegan theme a minute ago. People often claim vegan, but then other people say, well, it's plastics if it's not animal-based. How do you deal with this?
Well, on the one hand, I think we have to make a distinction between vegan and sustainable. Vegan is not always sustainable, but it should not be the same, because vegan basically comes from the food industry. It comes from the conviction that we do not want to harm animals and that we want to keep animals out of the supply chain. And this is also true for vegan in fashion. So it's not only about the leather material, but also glues, adhesives. We sometimes do not know where the animal components are in there, and we wanted to print our business cards, and then we saw that the paper even included animal products. So vegan is not always sustainable, but we need both, because our planet, or we as people on the planet, have no time to look for new solutions. All the solutions in the market still need plastics in order to be performant, but very often animal leather is also coated with plastics materials to protect it against water. So we've got a lot of synthetic materials in there.
But this often poses a problem. Which role does circularity play in both approaches now?
We really try to cover the entire way from design to supply chain and use circularity. So we first ask our customers what they want to have, what their demand is, and we also have an online configurator similar to what you described. Here you cannot have different sizes, but different patterns, different cuts. And then we try to find materials that are real circular, that work in a circular process. And for the outer material, yes, we have come a far way already. For others, we have more problems. Glues, for example, adhesives for shoes, this is still very difficult. We haven't found any adhesive yet that can be used in footwear. But we are now also talking to researchers, we are talking to institutes, and we also hope that we will get some subsidies, because as a startup, sometimes it's very difficult to raise enough money for our projects.
Katja, how do you do this? Of course, you focus on made to measure, but is this also important to you, the whole sustainable thinking? And it doesn't stop here. Okay, materials are one thing, the ingredients, but there are also many question marks. So you really have to drill deep. Maybe we can talk about this a little later. How do you communicate this externally? This is a big issue for many brands, to actually communicate about transparency. Many can say I am sustainable, but how do they transport the message? How they convey the message? How would you deal with the materials, apart from the idea that you only use products that are precious, so that you don't waste anything?
The fabrics that we source are already existing. So we buy fabrics that would no longer be available in such an abundance that they could be used by the mass companies. So we say these are waste materials and they should not be incinerated, they should not be discarded. We will buy the fabrics that are leftovers from the rest of the industry and we will reuse this. And this is also our story. We say this is a unique piece of clothing. This is something nobody else has because the customer can choose the cut, the pattern and the fabric, and this of course means that they have a completely different appreciation for the product, and this means all our products are either discarded or they are recycled. We really have to make sure that as much as possible we are using sustainable products. And apart from that, our technology that we have been building in the past 2 years, there is a lot of automation in the background, and we now make it available to other fashion brands as well in order to enable them demand-orientated production so that they change their processes. And it is possible. We now managed with our label. We have 0% returns. We have customers who are absolutely happy because the garment fits, because they appreciate the garment, and we really want to change the market with our approach. And we already have some production facilities. We are also in touch with young startups who want to go away from mass production and want to go for single-piece production. And we want to do it as low cost as possible in order to make sure that this is really taken up. It's the most sustainable approach. You don't have any warehouse, you don't have sales, you don't have the problem that you've got overproduction and have to either incinerate the clothes or you have to give them for free.
Majken, we just talked about recyclable merchandise and that you focus on circular economy. The EU textile strategy. So what are the approaches in Denmark?
Actually, 6 months ago, Denmark established this cross-sectoral collaboration in Denmark. So that's a collaboration between the Danish government. It's within the huge business clusters in the fashion industry. It's the business organizations and it's the actual companies. And the collaboration is to set down a joint venture in creating a more circular economy within the fashion industry. And some of the action points here is to actually increase the percentage of recycled material within the garments so that we reach a percentage of 40% in all garments being deriving from recycled materials. And in this, there is as you can say, another layer that is also about how can we actually recycle the material. Right now we have a problem with dividing the fibers in the material coming in, and that kind of lower the quality of the new garments so that the longevity is decreasing, and that's a problem. So that's a part of the whole how do you say it, strategy there, that we should actually be able to over decades, lower the amount of clothing or garments going to landfills. Right now we have 73% going to landfills. That's way too much. Yeah. So how can we actually recycle the material and upcycle them in new garments? Another one, or another point in that sector collaboration is how can we make cross-border circular design standards that the brands have to live up to be able to call themselves a circular brand. Because right now there is so much greenwashing in that. There is no transparency in the value chains. So how can we actually make some requirements so that we have a joint standard on this? And the last one is lower or increasing the amount of resale in Denmark. As I said prior, right now 9% of all garments being sold in Denmark is through resale. How can we actually increase that so we again can lower the amount going to landfills, etc.? So that's some of the initiatives we have in Denmark to kind of go into the EU standards that we talk about. Again, the public-private collaboration is essential here, because if you do not have the brands collaborating into this, sharing their knowledge, all of that, it will easily become a project that is totally separated from the actual industry. So I think that's very important and actually quite interesting to look into, perhaps in a year or so, to see what have they come up with. Can they have that support from the industry to actually go forward with concrete initiatives?
This is really exciting, because this actually goes back to you, the two of you. In Denmark, so many things are being done. Are there any similar initiatives in Germany? Anything that you could copy or a bandwagon on, cooperation with associations? Is there anything where you'd say, well, this is a pool that we could tap into for our operations, or isn't there anything?
Regarding the materials we use, the problem is that they are still very new, and the leather association is probably not the prime contact because they are afraid of competition. This is why we are working with smaller bag makers, and we try to build bridges, because we could of course also say, no, we don't want to cooperate with them because they are still using animal hides, but this is nonsense. We need a cooperation. They have to learn how to use the new materials, and we have to say, yes, these materials can be used, but it can be processed. So we need the bag makers that create high quality products from the new materials as well. Germany still has, and I can also hear this from Denmark, has many recycling approaches. Yes, we do need recycling, but at present sometimes it's cheaper to produce new polyester than to recycle polyester, and this makes the business model not very interesting at present. So we have the approach, no, we want things that do not have to be recycled, but which can be degraded to nutrients and can go back to the environment without being toxic.
What about you, Katja? Because people always speak about demand being there, but at the end there's no real community available that supports, because there are many associations, there are many seals and symbols, there are 1,000 things, but to be logically dealing with the product and the implementation, there's not so much available, is there?
Well, we have been on the market for 2 years now, and we are also trying to establish contacts with associations, with other players in the industry, because we have to cooperate, all of us together. And I think it's also necessary to have some standards, some regulations. Otherwise, people will just talk and they know that they have to do something, but they don't know how to implement it. A study showed that 60% of the companies think that it's much too expensive to go for a sustainable production process. And this is nonsense. This is not true. It is possible. So let's develop regulations, and then things will improve. Then the companies have to become active. And we are trying to create networks, also with other brands that we meet in various markets, also bridal fashion, men's fashion, dental, because if we join forces and do it together, we can change the world.
This community idea, the sense of community, is so important. I found it quite interesting what you said. You have to customize the message for the company as well. This is what you said, Michaela. Why aren't brands just making a more inclusive size range? Why aren't they simply adding 6 ranges to their size range? Okay, the design would differ, but they could easily edit. But this is hardly happening, or? Why is this so?
There are still many prejudices towards people who look different, who have a plus size. This is one reason. But on the other hand, it's also because many brands or many companies don't have the necessary know-how. They think it's extremely expensive to implement new sizes. Yes, okay, starting at a certain size, it will get more difficult. For 46, 48, you need new styles. You have to change the design process, and not everything can be produced in a plus size. I can understand this, but why don't you start with at least 1 or 2 pieces in each collection and then you expand gradually? I don't say that all the brands have to do everything in plus sizes, but let's get started with 1 or 2 garments and take it step by step. And you don't have to offer size 52, but perhaps 46 and 48. And not only that, the biggest problems that we have in the plus size community is that we cannot just go shopping like others. This is extremely difficult, because we, with a special body, we will have to test it out. We have to see ourselves in the mirror. I have to also test what it looks like when I'm sitting down. And this is difficult. It's so difficult.
There are plus size suppliers. They do existence. They are in existence. Fewer than we would like to have, but they do exist. There, the gear of fashion is probably the issue. Can you become active? You do consulting. You could actually trigger both sides: the fashion degree of the plus size suppliers and the companies that have not yet or cannot or don't want to increase their size range. Are you active already?
Yes, definitely. I do a lot of consulting to companies, for sure. And we also had some happy moments where we were successful. This was great to see that more garments are put on the market. But I know that it's a long process, and I am very disappointed by some brands for plus sizes in Germany, because they are producing fashion which is not fashionable, which is not stylish. Why don't you have the same styles for everybody? Why do you always have large flower patterns for larger women? I've got enough of them in my wardrobe. I don't need another 10 of them. We also want to have denim. We want to have crop tops. We want to have nice things. And we are allowed to do this. The fashion industry just has to understand this better and has to accept it. We have a different size, but we are not different from others.
Build in more normality. I think this is really exciting because it's all about information and transparency, a lack of information, total lack of information, and the willingness to cooperate and to network more strongly. But since the energy has to come from the individual person and the will to change matters, it's a very personal move. You all pursue the approach that you want to change matters with what you're doing. Of course, across sectors, not only in Denmark, but also in other sectors of industry. What would you like to see for the fashion industry to conclude this round, looking ahead into the future? In your areas, what needs to happen? What would you like to see happening in a year's or 5 years' time to be more relaxed about it? Over the past 3 years, we heard many exclamation marks, but we also were left with many question marks. So what would you like to see, Michaela?
First of all, I have to say the fashion industry should not lie any longer, because there is so much lying and greenwashing. It's not possible for a brand to say, I am size inclusive, and then I go online and say, it's not true. You only have 1 pair of jeans in my size, and this is sold out immediately. So either you are inclusive or you are not. And I also have to attack some of the German brands. You can't use models with size 36 or 38 because they only see this model and they say, well, I will never fit in these clothes. So if you don't feel represented, you don't want to go there. And we are feeling insulted because some companies even took plus size fashion out of their collection, say online you want to sell to me but not in a store. Well, if you want don't want to be size inclusive, okay, you don't have to be. If you say this is not my style, then it's okay. But stop lying. This is what I say. And I really wish for more people to say, yes, we want to change it. And it's important to ask questions, to get help. I'm always open for discussions, and I wish for more honesty, and people have to stop lying.
Super statement.
Sachen. Zum einen von der
Two things. First of all, it is necessary to have a better cooperation in the industry, and I also am convinced that we need regulation so that changes do happen, doable changes happen for the companies. But on the other hand, in order to limit mass production, we are wasting so many resources. We are incinerating materials, or we are dumping it to other countries. This is a no-go. This should no longer happen. And on the other hand, I also would like to see a more conscious approach among consumers. Well, I also want to follow the latest trends, but I do not need a new shirt every single week, which is of such poor quality that I discard it 2 weeks later. So we have to take a more conscientious approach. Yes, I know sometimes it's difficult with transparency, but many people are working to improve transparency. But we also have to make the consumers change their behavior.
So conscience, being conscious about the product and consumption.
Well, my wish goes in a similar direction. I also would wish for more honesty, but almost gave up. And this is why it's necessary to have regulations by politicians. Otherwise, it's not possible. And the sustainable brands are not too expensive, but the fast fashion is too cheap. A T-shirt for €5 can't have been produced in a sustainable manner, and nobody should believe this. And this is what I wish from politicians, but also from consumers. They have to really understand how much time is invested into a product, and for those people who produce it, we should show more respect and appreciation to them. One bag, it takes 8 hours to sew this bag, and you don't even include the sourcing of the material and everything else, but we have to explain this to people. And if you're aware of this, then the product is much more valuable to people again. So we have to really change our behavior here. And third wish, I'm a scientist, better data, because all our studies, carbon footprint calculations are based on data on polyester, which are completely wrong. So we need a better database. We have data where fracking in the oil industry is not included, and so the data does not work, and this is why we don't take the right decisions. So we need more researchers giving us proper and honest data.
So true data and appreciation, definitely. And Majken, this really sums up what we talked about over the past 3 days. It's wonderful. Maybe you can tell us what you would like to have for the future in the area of development and progress in sustainable thinking. We wanted to talk about sustainability by design, but we're looking at the future, really.
I just have to echo my panelists here. I think you're right, all of you. So if I should kind of draw attention to some of the things that you've actually already said, it would be requirements or regulation so that we have some common standards that we actually have to live up to. It would be transparency. Also to enable the consumer to make the right choice, to nudge the consumer to go in the right direction. Transparency is key, and we have to do that. And the last thing is, as you already said, partnerships, that we actually share knowledge between competitors, between public-private entities, between the industries, but that we also learn from other industries. We've seen these sustainability travel or transitions in other industries as well. For example, the built environment with architects. oh, come on, let's learn from them, see how they went about it in their processes, etc. So that would be my 3 goals. And then if I could just lay one more thing on top, it would be longevity in design. That we actually look into not producing garments that only last 6 months to be in fashion, but that we actually look into longevity in the design as well, so that we can actually resale for decades and still be in fashion.
Ja, am Ende wieder.
Well, at the end, appreciation again. Appreciation for everything. This embeds sustainability for ourselves, for the planet, and for our future, because everything in terms of a negative development will actually lash back at us. This was so exciting. We've had 3 days of Fashion Sustain. We've gone through tremendously exciting talks and panel discussions, lots of information, data, reliable data, evidence-based data, and creating the credibility. And time and again, there is such a wealth of information that you really know better, both as a manufacturer and as a consumer, to have clearer rules that are not so complicated, so that everyone can understand them without having to obtain a PhD beforehand. And I think this is an important approach for the future. Thanks very much for listening so attentively. And to conclude, the Neonit here in Düsseldorf, I think that it's a wonderful approach to have such a format here to share information, raise awareness about our future in terms of sustainable garments. So, thanks very much.